Welcome to the Smith Publicity All Things Book Marketing Podcast, offering tips, insights, and advice from the best in the publishing industry. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the All Things Book Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Olivia McCoy, and our special guest today is Anne MacDonald. She is the Author Acquisitions Director at Indigo River Publishing, which is a modern hybrid publisher that works with authors across all genres. Hi, Anne.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you for joining. So I'm really excited to talk to you today about hybrid publishing, and we were getting into it before the recording started, and I had to stop myself because I want it live on air for all of our listeners and watchers. So let's start with having you tell us more about your work, what you do to help authors, and then maybe getting into what a hybrid publisher is.
Yeah, so as the acquisitions director, I oversee the entire acquisitions process with Indigo River Publishing. And through that acquisitions process, we're acquiring new authors. So that's from the point of conception when an author decides to submit to Indigo River Publishing, through our author meetings, our review process, and then I'm kind of the final step. So we have acquisition managers that meet with authors, do a preliminary review, but then I do kind of an in-depth review of everything that comes to my desk because I like that. And I like to have a good idea of the story. I meet with the author, and then we present that book to the team and we figure out as a team, can we work with this author? Do we feel we can add value to what this author is writing? Can we take them to the next level? And are they going to be great to work with? And so that's kind of, I'm the final kind of step on presenting and saying, yes, I think this author could be a great potential for Indigo River Publishing.
I've worked with and for hybrid publishers in the past, and I kind of started off my career with hybrid publishing. So to me, it feels like, of course, everyone knows what this is. Like, this is a huge part of publishing. But as I've become more familiar with the different paths and worked with more and more authors, professionals, the more I'm realizing that it's not super widely known. So I'd love to discuss that a little more and talk about what is it exactly. So what are all the paths to publishing, the general paths to publishing people do know, and then where does hybrid fit within that?
So I actually started my career as a traditional author. So I kind of like started in a different space and learned about hybrid when I was hired by Indigo River Publishing. And it was very eye-opening. And it's still a huge part of my job right now with Indigo River is kind of the education on what hybrid is, what our company stands for, and the value that hybrid brings to the publishing world. You know, you've had traditional publishing for so long, and I think a lot of authors aren't aware that there's other ways. You know, they know that they're self-publishing, but still a lot of authors aren't willing to do it on their own. And so they tirelessly, query agents like I did. I mean, it took me 2 years to get a publisher and then another year to get my book published, not to mention what it took to write it and get it ready to query. So, I mean, we're talking what, like 4 years in the bank trying to get this book out there. That's a really long time as an author to be writing and putting books out there. It's a very slow process. And that was kind of one of the things when I came onto hybrid that I really liked about hybrid is a much quicker process. It's easier access to the publishers. You just go on our website and submit. We review every submission. We respond to every person within about 1 to 2 weeks. So we have a really hefty, quick turnaround time. And that was something that felt was really important because I've been that author that waited 8 months to hear no. And then I'm like, okay, let's start over, I guess. Because they're like, don't send out too many queries at one time, right? Because if you bomb 10 agents, then you can readjust and send out a different query. Like that's going to make a difference in my opinion. But anyways, so I actually found Indigo River. They're local to my community here in Pensacola, Florida, which was great. And then they kind of started telling me about what hybrid was. And I think hybrid's gone through this kind of metamorphosis of what it used to mean versus what it means now. And so what it means by our standards, and a lot of publishers that have come out and been very honest that they are a modern hybrid publisher, it means that we're the middle ground between self and traditional publishing. So with self-publishing, like I said, a lot of people don't want to do it on their own, or they can sink a lot of money into an editor that does not work out with them. They can sink money into a book cover that they're unhappy with. They can self-publish through Kindle Direct and then figure out, oh, hey, wait, my local bookstores can't have my book in this store because Amazon now owns the whole rights to publish just on Amazon. And a lot of authors don't know that. And so that distribution space, that marketing, they just, again, self-publishing, you really got to know what you're doing. And you got to have, it's a full-time job for sure to self-publish. So, and then you've got traditional, which they do everything for you. They buy the book from you, they produce the book, they distribute it. Hopefully, they market the book for you and kind of get you some exposure through their publishing house. But you lose your creative control over your book. So I learned that as a traditional author, that I really lost my seat at the table. And I was very upset about that. I wanted to be more involved. I wanted to have a say when I felt like the editing was completed. I was given her hellacious book cover, horrible. And I was so upset about it, and they would not let me change it. And so kind of feeling like I wasn't part of the process anymore, I really didn't like. So when I learned about hybrid, it's the beauty of both. It's this professional publishing house with professional people that are going to be your team, they're going to be your support. And then you also get to keep your control. So you're sitting at the table with that team. You're not kind of, in the back room or the trunk of the car, as I like to say. I always say hybrid is like you still get to drive the car, and we're just a really good GPS to get you to become a successful author.
I like that visual. That's kind of fun. Uh, is there a difference between indie and hybrid, or are those kind of synonyms for the same publishing path?
It just depends. Some publishers that are indie publishers, they do have a financial requirement for their authors, like they need to purchase X amount of books, or they need to put in X amount of money in agreement to move forward. That's hybrid. And so with indie, it's, in my opinion, indie is really just small publishing houses. Like I went with an indie publisher. The access to them is greater because you can just submit on their website a lot of the times. But that also means that they're not a big publisher, meaning that the print quality could be low, the services that you're getting could be low. So you really have to vet these indie publishers. And I always say the best way to vet a publisher is go to their website, potentially order a book or two, hold it in your hands, read it, see if there's errors, kind of what their formatting looks like. Because if you're going with a company, you're most likely getting the same book cover designer, potentially the same editors. We've got a huge basket of editors and book cover designers that we use, but we have our favorites and we have the ones that we use more frequently. And that's kind of, it shows in our catalog. And it shows in the quality of our books. So that's the best way to vet a publisher if you're getting a reach out from an indie publisher, because those are the companies sometimes I just feel like my company that I worked with, they ended up shutting down. They just got in over their head. They took on too many projects. They didn't realize how long publishing would take, and they ended up having to cut corners. And my book was a corner that they cut, and so it was just unfortunate.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. I'm sorry that was your experience. What do you think your experience would have been like had you gone with a hybrid publisher instead?
I think I would have had a much better experience just in the terms of education. Especially with Indigo River, our authors work with us shoulder to shoulder. It's extremely collaborative. So I like that because as an author, we are so thirsty for knowledge, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're just trying to figure out what is behind the curtain and how can I get to the other side and be a published author. And so there's all these questions all the time about it. And so I feel like when you go with a hybrid publisher, you really are in that editing process with your editor, you're in that book cover design. We guide and work with you on the marketing. So Indigo River is a little bit different. We do have a marketing department with our company, and you get an author liaison, which kind of walks you through marketing and launching your book. And what I tell authors, I'm a big analogy person, if you can't tell. What I tell authors is we carve the path for you, but you have to walk down it. And I've heard some of your podcasts of like the author has to still be involved. You can't just,
Yes.
say, okay, thanks, I'm going to go write my next book. I saw a meme the other day, and it's like, I wasn't, I used to just be a writer, and then I became an author, and I realized I had to run my own business. And it is, being an author is a business. You have to do stuff. You have to put yourself out there. You've got to be the face of your book, because that book is just going to be one product. You're going to have multiple books. And so you are the kind of the figurehead of that. And so I feel like I would have learned all that with hybrid because I would have been a part of that experience. So I think it would have been a little bit of a better experience. And I just feel like I would have gained a lot more knowledge on that first time.
I do love whenever authors ask me like what makes a successful book, like what do I do, what do I need to do, and I'm always saying the most successful books have the busiest authors,
Mhm.
which I know can be sometimes hard to hear because authors have lives and sometimes even hold jobs and careers outside of being an author. But the more you're doing to promote your book, even outside of what we're doing for you or your publisher is doing for you, the more is going to happen with your book. Like you don't want to just put it out and let it sit on this virtual bookshelf. You have to actually point people to it and hand sell it and
Yes.
really work at it and be the brand. I mean, you're creating a whole author brand around yourself and this book or these books or whatever it is that you're doing. So yeah, that education piece is incredibly important. And it's a lot of what I do too, especially in consulting here at Smith, is answering questions. What is happening in the publishing process? Like they say I'm in production. What does that mean? And we
Yeah.
go through the whole path together and figure out what can you be doing right now to support whatever your publisher is doing, regardless of which publishing path you've chosen. So it's a lot there.
Yes, and I think that's the huge bubble burst for a lot of authors is they
Mhm.
think their publisher does all this for them and they do not. And so, a lot of these uber successful authors that you see the big 5 picking up, they already have a platform. They already have their social following really large, their celebrity status, or they have a track record of selling a lot of books. So, they already have that, so they look at that and they think, "Oh, the publisher gave them that." No, they didn't.
Yeah.
Their publisher did not do that for them.
Yeah. I feel like, I don't feel like, I know different publishing paths really work best for each individual person. I mean, not every path is great for every author, and not every author is great for every path. For traditional, I do see a lot of impact and success with people that, like you said, that already have that huge brand and whole teams behind them personally. So, like celebrities and people that already have that platform they're working off of, leaders, that kind of thing. Who is the ideal author for hybrid publishing?
So, hybrid is extremely beneficial if you're a nonfiction author and you're putting together a book that's really going to support your business because you want to have creative control over that. You want to make sure that you are the driver in that situation because otherwise, if you're kind of giving your intellectual property over to a traditional publishing house, you risk them kind of changing your book to the point where it doesn't support what you're doing in your business and then it's counterproductive to what you're trying to do. We have a lot of our authors who are nonfiction who have said it's the best business card they ever made. They are publishing for a very different reason. They're publishing to get exposure, to get their message out there, and in turn receive clients from that. And so they are extremely successful with us. I also think series authors are really good because you want to control how that series goes, how many books you're having in this series. You want to have consistency with that series. And so I think that's another really good space for authors to be too. And we have all genres. We have actually a huge children's book catalog. And I love that because
Fun.
I used to be a teacher. So I really kin to the children's books. And our authors have been super successful with that. They really enjoy it. They feel like they have the control. And that really is what it comes down to with hybrid is just feeling like you had a say in the book that was produced under your name.
Does the process look different depending on the genre?
It does. It does. People think children's books are easy.
No.
No.
They're probably the hardest genre to publish, aren't they?
They are. They're the hardest to edit too. So
Hmm.
like and they come and I read the story and I think it's just such a beautiful story. And my editors always say that they kind of take all the words and they like toss them up like cards and they're like, let's start over because children's books are really, really hard to get them right.
Yeah.
And so the editing process with children's books sometimes takes longer than a full novel because every word has to be intentional because you only get so many, like 500. So
Yeah.
you've got to be really concise with your writing with children's books.
Hmm.
And then, the illustration piece, there's that whole illustration component that you go through with us that you wouldn't go through with another book. But for me personally, the hardest genre that I find, despite the fact that I love it, is fantasy. Fantasy is so hard because you're world building and your character building, you're doing all this stuff and anything's a go. I was reading this one book and the author said something like the man's face looked like a pig nose. But then I'm thinking to myself, but does he have a pig nose? Is there really a pig nose on his face? Because anything's open in fantasy. So that makes it really hard for me.
That's true. That is true. I definitely am a very visual reader, so I would have trouble shaking that image if that's what it said on the page.
Yeah.
What are some of the pros and cons of hybrid? I know we've talked a little bit about them, and I don't want to put you on the spot talking about the cons, but maybe a better way to word it or an easier way to answer it would be what kind of author maybe wouldn't benefit the most, or which genre would struggle the most with hybrid or something along those lines. But then I want to go back to the pros too, because there's lots of those.
Yeah, with hybrid publishing, there is an investment that the author brings to the table. So the author does have to be willing to kind of buy their seat at the table, so to speak.
Mm.
But in turn for that, you do get higher royalties on the back end. And there's a lot more transparency with that. So with Indigo River, our royalties are 50% on the back end. And then that's only less the cost of the distribution fee and the cost to print the book. We are not taking out any extended costs like, oh, we spent extra on marketing. Oh, we spent extra on, during the editing process. So we've got to make that money up somehow. That's what that kind of partnership is you're making that investment to have a seat at the table. And then we're working together on the back end through that with transparency and not hiding anything or,
Mhm.
sliding anything out there that sometimes happens.
Yeah.
But so that is, some authors are not able to make that financial investment. Indigo River really, especially when we really want an author, we're very malleable and workable. We really want every author to have the opportunity to go with hybrid publishing. And so we work really hard to adjust and have multiple models within our company, multiple investment levels, so that authors can take advantage of hybrid publishing. Because again, I just think that it is an extremely knowledgeable and great path for authors. It's a space that I think is only going to continue to grow, and I'm really excited about that. But
Yeah.
but yeah, that's, I don't know. That wasn't, I circumvented my con.
No, that was a great no. And honestly, that buying your seat at the table, I feel like is often something you see in publishing, especially with like airport placements, distribution. Like if all those books you see like on the table at airports, they paid for those spots. Same in a lot of chain bookstores. Anytime you see like a display or something, the author probably paid for that. And so I think there's more paid placement and paid opportunity in publishing than maybe the average reader knows. And so it's nice to be transparent and open about those opportunities and those costs so that no one's coming in unprepared.
Well, once you realize this is a business,
Mm-hmm.
it starts to kind of change your mindset on how you see everything when you walk into a bookstore, especially, and you see the
Yes.
books that you only see the spine versus you see the whole front. That's not
Mm-hmm.
just because they set it up that way.
Unless it's, one of us coming in, sneaking around, pulling books out face out, because,
Yeah.
a little covert operation, pulling books face out sometimes
I
just
know.
necessary.
Well, I didn't know this. I recently had a friend and they do like they stock for grocery stores, and he was like, it's the same thing in a grocery store. Like you
Yes.
pay for your space.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
was like, I
Target.
just thought they threw it on the shelves.
No, Target will, I mean, I know not necessarily Target, but like big retail stores will often pick the books, but they're also shown the books, marketed the books from
Mhm.
distribution teams and sales teams, stuff like that. So yeah, that is another pay to play, so to speak, placement.
And that's a huge thing about going with a hybrid or traditional publisher versus self-publishing is that distribution, having that
That's
space.
true.
We partner with Simon and Schuster to get that distribution space. And
Okay.
so our authors have, well, they don't have access, but we have access to their sales team, and we can kind of push the book with them and get them to push the book into brick and mortars. Because I still think authors, despite the fact that most sales happen online, a lot of authors still just want to see, they're like, how can I get my book in a store? And I'm like,
Mhm.
I can get your book in a store. Not a lot of people are going to buy it there, but we can get it there
Mhm.
for you.
Yeah. What's the difference or benefit? Do you lean more print on demand, or do you do large scale printing for authors?
So we do large scale printing for authors, and it really just depends. So we have some authors that are going to be selling hard out the gate. That's an
Mhm.
excellent candidate for a print run because you're going to get lower cost per book. You're going to get a higher quality when you do a print run because it's just a better machine versus doing print on demand. However, if you are a slow burn author, as I like to call them, which is what I am, you are just slowly trickling a couple of book sales along, but it's about you're building your readership. Like as a fiction author, I have to have multiple books out there, right? So I'm a
Mhm.
slow burner. So with every book, I'm building my readership. So to print 1,000 or 2,000 books, it's going to take me a significant amount of time to kind of sell those books as a slow burn author. So it might not be the best space for me financially to invest into that. And my cover is going to look good whether I do print on demand versus whether I do a print run. Now, children's book authors, that's another huge space where print runs are a lot better because the quality of those illustrations are going to be better.
That makes sense. That completely makes sense. I worked with a lot of children's books too, and it's children's books and photography, like coffee table
Yes.
books are the most work, not just to produce, but to promote and everything. It's just there's such a niche audience, a specific person that wants to read those that you have to reach, which is
Mm-hmm.
incredible. And I love that. And it feels like a fun challenge. But you'd be surprised how many people are like, oh, but children's books are so short. They've got to be easy. No, not at all.
Not at all. I know that was the one thing when I told people I wrote a book, because I was teaching at the time. They're like, "Oh, you wrote a children's book?" And I was like, "No, I did not."
Nope, it's a lot of work.
Nor will I. I might do mid grade. I mean, I've got
Oh
two
yeah.
sons that, they're in fourth and fifth grade. And so they're really into mid grade right now, which makes me really into mid grade. Cause I'm like, oh, what are you reading? What's this idea? And so I'm like, maybe I'll do that. But a full on children's illustrated book, I don't think I'll ever go there.
Middle grade's fun. It's kind of a mix. Sometimes you can do those little like chapter heading illustrations. Yeah, that would be really cute. What's the timeline for hybrid publishing? How long does it take from acquisitions to publication day?
So this is another great thing about hybrid that I don't think authors realize, because I feel like when an author decides they want to publish a book, they want to publish it yesterday. And then you realize how long it takes and you're just in this torturous like limbo forever while you're trying to publish. I see people make their announcements like, "Oh, I sold my book to this publisher and I'm going to get released in the summer of 2025." I'm like, "2025? That's not even next summer. That's the next summer." Like you're sitting on this book for like 2 years
Mm-hmm.
and you can't, and it just feels like, and I know you can do stuff because we talk to guys like, Smith Publicity all the time. And they're like, you can start doing stuff a year out, 6 months out. So I know there's stuff you can be doing, but without the book, it just, it's that anxiety of like, I'm ready to get the book out there. I want to know if people love it, if people hate it, that kind of thing. But,
I know it
so with
well.
yeah. So with the hybrid, you can probably, so like, again, it took me 4 years, writing, querying, trying to get the book out there. Let's say I finished writing the book, I could query Indigo River tomorrow. And within 2 weeks, they're getting back to me. And then within that month, we are offering a proposal to publish the book. Then once that proposal is offered, you're getting started with our editors within 2 weeks. So we have very, very tight timelines, which is why I read a lot and I'm up at midnight a lot, because I'm very adamant on keeping those timelines short and tight, because we really want to be able to offer that to our authors to get that book published within 12 months, 18 months, maybe 24 months. It sometimes depends. There are fast tracks for us with Indigo where you can, once you're through with the production process, you can release your book in 3 months, versus there's longer tracks where we're doing a much bigger marketing campaign with you. You potentially have Smith Publicity involved, and we're kind of about 12 months out. We're really kind of, we're doing a huge print run. Those print runs take time to get into the queue because we do those through Simon and Schuster. So we have to kind of like get in there and be like, find our time and space with all the other books that they're publishing. But so yeah, that is one of the benefits of hybrid, is it can be significantly quicker. Again, that access to the publishers is right there. You just submit online. You don't have to kind of like wait and query and try to get an agent to then do that work for you. But if you don't have an agent, I do recommend that you professionally review your contract. Make
Yes.
sure you know exactly what you're getting into, whether you take it we've taken it step by step with some of our authors. Some of our authors have had lawyers look at them, you know, a lawyer drew up our contract. And so it's a very professional contract, and we are very transparent in that contract as well. So we'll sit down and we'll go line by line with you. Cause I even did that with my traditional publisher, and there were still loopholes and dark spots that I never saw coming, where I was like, oh, whoops.
And if you need a lawyer, some literary law expertise, check back a couple episodes ago. We had one on the show,
Oh,
and they're
yay.
great. Yeah, Joseph Perry. So check that out. But no, that's great advice. Thank you so much for that. How can our listeners get in touch to learn more?
So you can check us out on our website, indigoriverpublishing.com. And, you know, you can check out our socials to learn more. We're just recently kind of launching a new social campaign that's coming out in a few days. And I'm really excited about it because the focus is education on who we are, education on hybrid publishing, just to try to get that information out there to authors. Because like we talked about, a lot of authors don't know that it's a legitimate path, nor do they trust it yet. And so it's like we're trying to like build that trust with those authors out there and say, no, we really are here to support authors, to make your dreams come true, to help you get publication, and to help you have a better space when you're publishing your book. Because as much as it's a business, those books are our children, and we love them, and we're attached to them. We're attached to certain parts of them. And if you go changing that, some authors get really ornery.
Do you want to mention where we can learn more about your books as an author?
Yeah, thank you. So it's Ann Brooks, no E, ANNBROOKS.com, or AnnBrooksAuthor.com. And from that website, you can join and listen to my blog. You can buy my books. Indigo River is in production on their own podcast, which I'm super excited about, which will focus on various authors that we publish, various other authors that we know or that we're just getting information from. And again, it's a whole education piece. It's meant to help you understand how authors are finding that success, because every author finds it differently. So you really have to, if you want to be a successful author, you have to say, okay, who in my genre is killing it? How did they do that? So, trying to figure out like, okay, Colleen Hoover, what happened? How did that happen? How can I make that happen for me? Trying to like figure out those nuances of what really takes you to that successful level as an author.
I'm going to have to start pushing our authors there so they can find their comp authors, their comparative authors and titles, and start learning. So that's awesome. I'm going to keep an eye out for that. You'll have to let me know when it starts up.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really love talking to you.
Yes, it's been great. Thanks for having me again.
And listeners, watchers, if you like this episode, don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with anyone else that might be interested. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Smith Publicity All Things Book Marketing Podcast. To reach us and learn about our many services, visit smithpublicity.com or send us an email to info@smithpublicity.com.